Hello, everybody. It's Liam. Before we jump into this week's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Any rates, reviews, and subscriptions will help us get more followers. If you have any Batman friends in your life, please recommend this season and tell them to check out our seasons on John Cassavetes and Philip Seymour Hoffman. And if you haven't, please do so now. Our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Our art is by Sean Mannion, who directed Meme the Movie, now available on Amazon Prime, memethemovie.com, Uncle Sean on Twitter. Enjoy this episode. I'm Liam Billingham.
Why the dramatic pause between Liam and Billingham?
Because it just emphasizes how great I am.
George Fergopoulos.
And this
is
a really slow beginning of the show. This is Oeuvre Busters. Whoa!
I think we needed something dramatic for
Christmas time is here. It is January like 16th. We are behind.
It's January 16th in the present.
This is a Batman Returns episode.
But
great Christmas movie. Yes?
we're recording in the past. Figure that out.
Oh, you want to talk about the dislocation of time and space due to media and
like
digital
capitalism?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Of course. Like capitalism makes all locations synchronous and yet also asynchronous. Think about it.
Speaking
about
of
it.
capitalism, late capitalism, how about this Max Schreck fellow?
Oh, so what are we discussing today, Liam?
We're discussing Batman Returns, the 1992 film, the sequel to 1989's Batman.
Continuing our deep dive through the Batman canon.
Through the Caped Crusader Chronicles.
Ooh, I like the alliteration there.
Thank you. This film is directed by Tim Burton, as was the original, and continues to star Michael Keaton in the role of Bruce Wayne / Batman, Michael Gough as Alfred Pennyworth, Pat Hingle as Commissioner Gordon, and we have some new players in this film, including Danny DeVito as the Penguin.
Oswald Cobblepot.
Might hear a heater, folks. Come on, it's Christmas time. Michelle Pfeiffer as Selina Kyle / Catwoman. And Christopher Walken as Max
You
Schreck.
are a Catwoman.
You are a Catwoman.
I should have worked on my Christopher Walken before this.
Being an alligator. This movie is great.
It is great. Should we do a very quick recap?
Yeah, because we didn't do it for the Batman
We
episode.
did not.
Would you like to do the quick recap?
Not really, but I'll try.
I'll do it.
Okay,
Picking
go for
up, I'd say probably sometime after
Well,
Batman.
I think it's 8 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days.
Oh, it's right. It's 8 months,
Yeah.
3 weeks, and 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Gotham seems to be enjoying the beginnings of the Christmas season when out from the shadows, who should appear but a penguin and his cadre of evil penguin circus freaks who attack the city during a tree lighting ceremony hosted by the mayor and by Max Schreck, wealthy capitalist about town, who is planning a sort of a new power plant for the city of Gotham, which will actually suck energy, which is discovered by his meek assistant, Selina Kyle, who he tries to murder. Selina then becomes Catwoman. Simultaneously, the mayor's son is kidnapped at another sort of holiday event or press conference and saved by a puckish man named Oswald Cobblepot, who lives in the sewer, who is referred to as the Penguin Man, and uses this as a ploy engineered with Max Schreck to become a mayoral candidate and replace the mayor. Now, we haven't really mentioned so far
the
Batman, because this is actually not a movie about Batman. But Bruce Wayne is back. He's broody as ever. Michael Keaton gives I would say a smaller but no less committed performance as Bruce Wayne. And he suspects from a certain point that Penguin might be a villain. And he tangles with Catwoman, with whom he has sort of a psychosexual relationship, while simultaneously being sort of enchanted by Selena Kyle.
Yep.
Who has returned as Max Schreck's secretary. This all culminates in the Penguin who is humiliated. It culminates in his plan to take all of the firstborns from Gotham, and when that doesn't happen, all hell breaks loose. The film ends with Penguin dead, Catwoman missing, Max Schreck gone, and Bruce Wayne all alone on Christmas.
Aww. Well, he has Alfred.
He has Alfred.
And he has a cat that he grabs from the street.
And there might be another cat somewhere else.
Dun, dun, dun.
This film, so a couple things. It came on the heels of the success of the original Batman. And it is a step forward budgetarily. I believe it's an $80 million compared to the original's $48 million budget. And it shows this is a bigger, more ambitious movie. The production design is off the fucking hook. Beautiful. The performances are amazing. I think you said it best. It's one of the few sequels that is maybe better than the original.
Yes. And I said in my previous episode that I'm not a huge Tim Burton fan, but you definitely could tell, and it works for the better, that Tim Burton had more control, and this film is so much weirder and creepier and freakier than the first one.
It's way freakier. It's a lot darker, and which is interesting because the first one's pretty dark.
Is it a lot dark? I mean, it's darker in certain ways. I guess the infanticide makes it a little bit darker.
Infanticide's pretty dark.
But it's also, I think, weirder in more magical ways. So, like, for example, like the way in which Selena Kyle is, like, resurrected. So she falls out of this window.
Right.
And plummets what we think is to her death, and all these cats come out of nowhere, these alley cats come out of nowhere and like bring her back to life.
Right.
So there's also like a bit more of a magical element to this one.
You know what these two films?
It's a Christmas miracle.
You know what these two films have in common? That
Batman? He's in the title, yeah. He's Batman Returns.
Is that they're very, very concerned with origin stories.
Yes.
But they are not boring. So the film opens with, like, I'd say a 5 or 6 minute sequence where we sort of see the Cobblepot home, and the camera sort of there's a lot of great Tim Burton, like, let me show you the environment with all of its gothic splendor in this film. And the first one we see is the Cobblepots. Camera pushes in on their home to reveal Daddy Cobblepot, played by Paul Rubens. Who's
teaming up with Tim Burton after
Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yeah.
Whose wife gives birth to a freakish human being that eats their cat. Yeah. And the way they solve this problem is to dump the bassinet into the river, shades of
Moses. It's very biblical.
Right.
You also come back to that imagery later on.
And the imagery of him floating into the cavernous sewer below Gotham Citadel, Gotham Citadel,
yeah.
Is what the opening credits play over, which I think is a nice juxtaposition from the first film. I'm glad we recorded both of these in the same day so we could talk about this, because in the first film you're sort of going through what feels like maybe the Batcave. It's eventually revealed to be the Batman logo, but this film seems to be bringing you into the Penguin's lair, and you just see a bassinet go down the river, and it has a Moses feel.
Yeah. Where's Messiah now?
Do you want to describe Catwoman's origin?
Well, just briefly, also, I want to say what's also great about...
No, I asked you to explain something.
What's also great about the opening... The opening sequence is that it also plays immediately with this kind of almost like upstairs downstairs dynamic.
Oh yeah, a lot of class rage in this movie.
A lot of class rage, and reminiscent of Parasites, where there's all this stuff that's going on like below the surface level of the city, primarily through the eyes of the Penguin character, and what's going on above, and how both of these kind of like places are both intimately related to one another, and yet obviously radically different from one another.
This film also expands on the theme of freaks. That's a big part of the first film. Like, Tim Burton has definitely seen Todd Browning's film Freaks, which I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's worth looking up.
Yeah, I heard it's rather disturbing.
It's very disturbing, but it's also like been embraced by like communities of people who are differently abled or feel ostracized from society, because it doesn't shy away from kind of those things. Yeah. And you know, in a way, this might be a little more exploitative, but this is also a carnivalesque kind of film.
So one thing also that's like the Penguin uses that term, I think maybe repeatedly, but also at some point towards the end when he's fighting with Batman for the last time, he says something like, "We're both freaks, but I don't wear a mask." Right,
exactly. A lot of mask talk in this film as well.
Yeah, so it's interesting to think about the ways in which, again, like Batman or Bruce Wayne is, and again, part of me also hates using this term, but is like a freak, even though he looks like a normal person, but all of this, let's say, kind of internalized trauma that he has makes him wear this mask and be this weirdo.
The most traumatized person in the Batman films is the white heterosexual male.
Of course, my white heterosexual billionaire. Of course, yeah.
Let's talk about the cast. Let's talk about the performances real quick. Michael Keaton's back. Let's do Michael Keaton last. Danny DeVito. This is a legendary performance.
It's amazing.
Unbelievable. The makeup is amazing. He has flippers. They've made him look quite chubby. It's probably Danny DeVito hair with a wig and like a skull cap on top.
They're probably doing something, yeah.
It doesn't really look like Danny DeVito, but is like unmistakably Danny DeVito. And I think it's worth saying that in 1992, Danny DeVito was a big movie star.
Huh.
It just was like well known. He'd been in so many things. Twins, Throw Mama from the Train, Cheers. He'd been on.
Well, Taxi.
Taxi. But he also was
on
episode Cheers.
Was he?
Taxi would have been the big thing. That's true. And he just goes for it. He was recently on Mark Maron's podcast, and he talks about hours and hours of makeup and how that affected the performance, because this is like a truly committed vision of a performance.
Totally.
Do you have a favorite penguin moment in the movie?
I mean, when he eats the herring, that's kind of cool.
When he eats the herring, I like that. My nose could be gushing blood, and then he bites the guy's nose off. That, and also how he's so fucking horny.
He's fucking the blue balls on this guy. Oof. The penguin wants to fuck.
Penguin wants to fuck.
I also told you while we were watching this, I'm pretty sure he's fucking some of those penguins.
He might be having sex with those penguins. Yeah. But he has scenes like, for example, when he becomes potentially the mayor, or he's running for mayor. He really wants to have sex with Jane Hooks from SNL, who plays one of his campaign managers. He kind of loses it. He like pins a girl who like shows up and says he's a role model for like young people.
Yeah, and he's very excited to pin a button on her blouse.
There's a scene when Michelle Pfeiffer shows up as Catwoman, and all he wants to do is, she's on his bed, and he wants to do is get down.
Yeah, I think though
it feels a little provocative for us. It's a blockbuster film.
Yes, it's definitely played for a laugh, but you definitely, I think what's good about it also is that at moments you definitely get a feel for what it must be like to be this like hideous looking individual.
Correct.
And obviously like the idea that you will never ever be touched in any sort of kind or comforting or meaningful way.
Season 2 meta thing. In the first 2 seasons, you'd often say correct to me, and it made me crazy because it was very sort of pretentious and a little bit condescending. So I'm going to do it to you in season 3.
Please. Wait, what would I say?
Correct. Yeah, you do that. It's awful.
That is correct. But the other thing also, I was afraid I was going to say. Penguin,
let's talk about Michelle Pfeiffer then.
Let's talk about
Michelle Pfeiffer. So George and I watched this film together, and we definitely would remark on a pretty regular basis about the feelings that Michelle Pfeiffer stirred in us, both when we were 10 or 11-year-old boys watching this film, but also now as a late 30-something-year-old adult men. She's a goddess. She's a goddess. She's amazing in this movie.
The way she flips the switch. Also, by the way, this film is completely and utterly fantastical because before she like transforms
her origin story
into Catwoman.
Is what you're going to talk about now.
Well, no, I was going to be like how they like try to like downplay Michelle Pfeiffer's looks by like giving her glasses and like tussling her hair. I was like, oh yeah, this woman is supposed to look like she's a normal looking woman.
So there's a little bit of like there's some I would say I don't know if they're problematic, but they're problematic in the sense that they're sketched in a comic book way, elements of this film. She's an assistant to Max Schreck, played by Christopher Walken, who we'll get to. She's girly. I say that, and that's sort of the way that she's portrayed. She lives in an all pink apartment with a lot of stuffed animals.
But she's supposed to be kind of like homely in the beginning too.
Yeah, she's supposed to be homely. It's like they put her hair up and put glasses on her, and you're not like, oh, I almost said Michelle Goddess. Michelle Pfeiffer, like just like one of the most, it's an incredibly beautiful woman in this movie. Like kind of just, it doesn't, how would you even describe it? It's like she's sort of just, it's just very, very silly. And when she becomes Catwoman, which happens when she's pushed out a window by her boss, she's brought back to life by cats.
Yeah.
Memories like the colors of my mind.
And I also
shiny watercolor memories.
I mean, we'll talk about it too, but like
of the ways we were.
The degree to which this film has any sort of kind of feminist politics, it's really limiting.
So once she becomes Catwoman, she the introduction of the character, she beats the shit out of a guy who's attacks and might try to rape a woman, and she sort of is like, "Oh, I love it when they pick up. Isn't it such a man thing to pick up on a woman half her size?" Like right. But then she treats the woman equally bad. But then, as you pointed out, she has a lot of like kind of lines about.
Well, like, yeah, like whenever there are so many lines about her, again, being this like super femme woman. So like
she breaks a nail.
She breaks, quote unquote, a nail.
Yeah.
She makes like a joke about like when she abducts that one woman and she says like, oh, we need to have some girl time or girl talk or something. So like a lot of like the one-liners on her end, especially about her being like this like super feminine, sexy woman.
Right.
And it kind of undercuts any sort of, because she is like a very powerful figure. She goes toe-to-toe with Batman. And it's also interesting to think about her as
and the Penguin and Max Schreck.
No, but I mean physically. Like she fights him. And it's interesting to think about her as being like the first physical kind of equal that Batman has in these films, because he could beat the shit out of the Joker easily.
And he beats the shit out of the Penguin.
Something
I like about the movies is that the big bosses are barely... This movie has a minimum of Batman beating the shit out of henchmen, which I feel like becomes a thing in later superhero movies where it's like, I gotta fight 50 henchmen before. It's like video game plotting.
Yeah.
I mean there's some of it here, but it's very entertaining here.
It is.
There's like 2 or 3 sustained action sequences.
What you were right about when you pointed out, and I was kind of like blown away by it, is that you only see him as Batman twice in the first hour.
Yes.
Which is fucking incredible.
So this is a good time to talk. One thing I want to say very quickly is that one thing I think the movie sets up in terms of its gender politics early on is that Selena Kyle is a woman who constantly is belittled and mansplained by her boss, and it makes her desire to get revenge on him like very, very sympathetic. And I would say that one of the things about this movie that's really interesting is that the protagonist in this movie is not Batman. It is the Penguin.
Correct.
Because the Penguin and Catwoman have better character arcs, which I think now is a good time to start talking about Bruce Wayne, again played by Michael Keaton, because Bruce Wayne has the same arc in this movie as he had in the first one. It's just a little more nuanced. What do you think that arc is?
That arc? Well, again,
it's character arc. So character arc is when at the beginning of a piece of art, let's say a more traditional narrative.
An arc is where you put animals, like two of a kind.
An arc?
Yeah, an arc. Noah had one.
Okay, so that's one thing, but there's
Noah, yeah, gotta build an arcade. I don't know the rest of that.
Is that a Flanders song?
It is.
Flanders.
I thought it was a real song, though. I thought it was a real Jesus song.
Well, I don't know. I'm not a Jesus guy.
You don't have the Jesus CD?
Jesus freaks out in the street.
Is that Ween?
No, it's fucking Elton John.
Oh, I was going to say Bruce Springsteen.
So, in the first film, Batman can't quite commit to a relationship with Vicky Vale because...
And that comes up in this one
and which she talks about with Selena Kyle, Catwoman. In this film, he meets Selena. What I do think is that there is this sort of thing where he's like, I can't reconcile my Batman identity. Though, in this film, he does extend the offer to be with her. This film also struggles with the fact that, like the first film, they go on one date and then suddenly it's a very serious relationship. And the date they go on, they fool around on his couch and like
they don't even bone.
Yeah, they don't. God, that term is rude.
Sorry.
They don't have sex.
They don't make love.
They don't make sweet boning.
Jinx. But no, you're right. If there's a weakness in this film, it's again how heteronormative it is, in the sense that there has to be this romantic entanglement at the center of it.
That he is resistant to because of his two identities, which he talks about is wearing a mask.
Correct.
And she talks about it too.
I think there are ways in which one can, let's say, play out those dynamics about his struggle about being these two different people.
Yes.
But again, I think defaulting again and again to this, like, oh, I love this person, but I can't be with them because I'm Batman. Yeah. Like, it's a trope that gets repeated a lot.
Well, that's a huge comic book trope, too.
It is.
Also worth noting that this was Michael Keaton's last film, and he is largely marginalized in this movie because, quite frankly, as is almost always the case, like Hans Gruber is more interesting than John McClane. Kylo Ren is more interesting. No, he's not. But whatever the arc is,
he's more interesting than Rey, at least in the third one.
Rey, what? Rey's the best character that's ever come out of that franchise. Get out of my face. Followed very closely by Kylo Ren.
Greedo? The 30 seconds of Greedo's on screen.
He shot first and third. But I think that this film, the Penguin, is much, much more interesting than the Batman. And so is Catwoman.
What is interesting about Penguin
is
that he's a kind of inversion of Batman.
Tell me more about that.
Well, that they're both him and Bruce Wayne are orphans. They both come from...
And Bruce Wayne has sympathy for him at the beginning.
Yeah, and they both come obviously from wealth.
Yes.
But obviously they've been abandoned in different ways. Like, so obviously Bruce Wayne still has his wealth.
Yeah.
And the Penguin clearly does not. And Bruce Wayne still has like his normal looks. The Penguin does not.
Well, the Penguin never had looks. He was born like a weird penguin.
That's what I mean, yeah. But I mean, just in the sense that...
He eats a cat in the
there are
first couple
these...
minutes of the movie.
Like easy...
It is not Taylor Swift.
Easy demarcations. Taylor Swift.
She's in the Cats movie.
Oh,
Pay
right.
fucking attention to the culture.
That looks like a nightmare fuel.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm not going to see it, but I'm curious.
I'll definitely stream
Memories.
it. But... Yeah, and I mean, I think what's interesting about them is that they're both in some sort of way like
wearing headphones,
freakish.
Yes, they are freaks. They're freaks. One is a wealthy industrialist capitalist who beats up mentally handicapped people.
We actually don't know what Bruce Wayne does.
He runs Wayne Enterprises. Yeah. He's an industrialist.
What is Wayne Enterprises?
Doesn't matter. I mean, in the Nolan
sells
ones,
weapons to
in
the
the Nolan
Saudis.
ones, they make weapons. Yeah. In this film, he actually has a business meeting with Max Schreck in this film, and it seems like Schreck wants investment.
I like the idea that like Bruce Wayne was calling like all these congressmen. He's like, listen, we got to go to war in Iraq because I'm going to make millions if we do. It's like, do it. He's behind that.
What?
Yeah.
Are you talking?
I'm just saying.
I think that actually it is a bit of a... I think that, one thing this film does, both of these films, Batman and Batman Begins, do very well, is create an origin story for these characters. One thing that they do not do well is explore what Bruce Wayne's job is, which
correct,
much more cleanly and clearly done. Like there are scenes at Wayne Industries in the Dark Knight films, meaning the Christopher Nolan films. I mean, what he does in those movies seems pretty repugnant, but whatever, he's doing it. I do think that the third one has some pretty prominent. The third one being Batman Forever in this franchise, directed by Joel Schumacher, because Edward Nygma is a Wayne Industries employee in that film.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
mm-hmm. But there's no Lucius Fox in these films, so there's no connection to the. These films are more. Fantastical and more sort of the vision of that are drawing a little bit less from the comic book.
This one in particular.
Yes.
But that also reminded me too of the dichotomy that the film tries to develop, that there's a good way to be a capitalist, Bruce Wayne, and a bad way to be a capitalist, which is Max Schreck.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that.
I mean, it's kind of very simple that Max Schreck is kind of like the bad guy, like the bad billionaire, and Bruce Wayne's like the good billionaire.
Are you suggesting there's no good way to be a capitalist?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. But there is a moment later in the film where Catwoman, Selena Kyle as Catwoman, plans to murder Max Schreck, and Batman says, let's turn him over to the police. And she says something like, that the law will treat him differently, the same way that it'll treat us differently. And he says, you're wrong on both accounts. And I gotta... she's right.
Of course.
She's probably pretty right.
And that's what's interesting about these films when they're reactionary, is that when those kind of moments of truth rise to the surface, they're totally silenced. You're supposed to watch that.
Well, to say that they're not silenced, it's just because he responds, it does not silence it in the film.
It's a corrective to her.
Okay.
It's supposed to be.
Right, you're right. It's true that every time anyone says a piece of dialogue, you forget immediately what someone before them says.
Here we go.
I just think that I agree with your point largely. I mean, in the sense that she's wrong, he's wrong, but like
No,
it's still present in the text of the film that we can watch on Amazon for $3, and she's sympathetic in the film. He's not ultimately the most sympathetic character. I'm more sympathetic to her. There, I said it.
But why are you not sympathetic to him?
Well, I am. He's Bruce Wayne. I love Bruce Wayne.
Yeah. So
I love him.
What happens in this film to not make you sympathetic to him?
Oh, he's a piece of shit. No, I don't know. No, I get it. No, of course. But just because someone says something and someone says diametrically opposed to it does not mean it's silenced. I don't agree with
silence
that.
Might be the wrong word.
Well, then maybe use right words.
Sorry.
Dad.
I said corrective.
Oh.
It's a corrective. You're meant to then
you're right.
Be like, I'm on Bruce Wayne's side. There is justice in the world. Can we also, really, speaking of justice, can we talk about the biblical justice?
You want to talk about Batman Dawn of Justice?
No, but the way fucking Batman just murders people in this film.
Holy shit.
More so explicitly than he does in the first one.
Yeah, he just puts a bomb on a guy.
He puts a bomb on a guy?
He spins the Batmobile around on a turn and like flames a dude.
Did you see that guy burn?
Burn, baby, burn.
And you see the pleasure in Batman's eyes.
Yeah, you do.
He's like, this motherfucker's burning.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't know if you see. I do like
I
that
see
you
the pleasure.
sort of see. You're staring
yes,
into his
yes.
eyes. Yeah, there's a little more fear. He's a little more. The character in general, you get more. The suit
There
seems
is
to
more
be
fear.
better built for reaction. And the first film, most of the time, you're like, "What's?" I can't see his face. In this film, you're like, "Oh, like he narrowly avoided those penguin missiles."
Oh, the penguins.
Those penguins. Yeah. So yeah, I think that the film, though, one thing that came up that was interesting, and we're going to compare this a lot to the Nolan films, but I think of the Batman films we're going to watch, the Nolan Batmans and the Burton Batmans are the best.
Correct.
And they also have a relationship. You fucking did
I
the
keep saying
correct.
correct.
God
Sorry.
damn it. Can you just say yeah, I agree? Does it have to be correct?
Not correct. Incorrect.
Oh, correct. Yes, I know. And
You fucking insulted me too. You said it once, and I just can't
one
stop saying
thing I
it.
love about is that the penguin wants to take down the uber rich. He kidnaps the wealthy firstborn, the firstborn of wealthy families.
Again, very biblical.
Catwoman wants to kill the shitty capitalist who's poisoning the city, and Penguin actually blackmails Max Schreck in order to get him on his side because he's a shitty guy who creates terrible things that hurt the city and owns a bunch of businesses. I love how one of the only storefronts you see in the film is Schreck stores.
Yeah, and she blows it up. Or she blows one up.
But what I wanted to bring up about that is that this film has the class resentment that Catwoman has in the third Batman film. The Dark Knight Rises, the third Christopher Nolan Batman film, but it's not so heavy-handed. And I think these films succeed, not that I don't like the Nolan films, but they have a much slighter touch.
Well, you were saying...
Would you agree?
Yeah, I think you said in the previous episode that one way in which this manifests itself is that these films, the Burton ones, are all done on sets.
Yes.
Whereas the Nolan ones are filmed on location.
Yeah,
and you feel that. There's a certain kind of grittiness and realism to the Nolan ones that you don't have in the Burton ones.
That allows,
And it allows the Burton ones, I think, to do, again, these more, for lack of a better term, like comic booky kind of things.
Yes.
And it works magically well. And I think, for me personally, the ways in which, if I remember them correctly, and I remember the third one correctly, that the Schumacher ones do not, is they lean way too heavily.
They're campier.
They're way campier.
And they're queerer.
And they're way more, but they're also way more comic booky.
Yes. Well, I'd take issue with that term.
Well, they're not as dark as the Burton
Well,
ones.
I think that and this is only something that's occurred to me now, but I don't think we should say comic booky because comic books, it's a little bit of like so let me offer this as an alternative. So there's 4 films in this specific Batman franchise. There's Batman, Batman Returns, Batman Forever, and Batman and Robin. The first 2 films, Batman and Batman Returns, sort of exist on the line between campy and like not gritty, but definitely like rooted in like reality. The third and fourth feel much closer to the 1960s, a very exaggerated version of the 1960s, which is probably the most well-known, is very well-known. We don't know much about the 1940s Batman serial, 1950s. Like those are probably less well-known in the culture. But I think that the easiest comparison of the later, this franchise Batman films is the campy 1960s show, which is more like serialized plot of the week. It's kind of unclear, like the sort of nefarious plans in those films are totally absurd. Whereas like in these 2 films, it's really pretty dark.
He wants
to kill the firstborn
He wants
sons.
to kill those kids,
Yeah, it's a lot.
And Catwoman has like a very straightforward like revenge kind of.
The other thing that this film has that the following 2 don't is, for lack of a better term, is the way it plays with the sort of sadomasochistic psychosexual relationship between Catwoman and Batman, where they want to fight, but they also want to.
They do.
Fuck. And
can you blame them? They're both really attractive people.
I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer's a little cuter.
The height of their,
but Michael Keaton has that je ne sais quoi.
He does.
But yeah, I think that's one thing that these films have is they're a little more adult. This feels like a harder PG-13 than the first one, which is a pretty hard PG-13. I don't think that
I mean, Batman again trapping dynamite on somebody is pretty fucking dark.
But then the Dark Knight, the fact that the Dark Knight is PG-13, I think in some ways is crazy.
Again, I have to go back and watch. I think I only watched that film once, actually.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
And you fucking have opinions of you're always like, oh, it's a bad. You've only seen it one time.
That impression was so fucking.
I saw it
just
4
like
times
me,
in the theater.
By the way, that sounded exactly
I saw it
4 times.
Yeah.
Best Batman movie ever.
Best Batman ever.
I should only watch it 3 more times today.
What else to say? Like shit.
I mean, what else is there? Those penguins are so fucking cute.
Their penguins are real cute.
And the Penguin Viking funeral too.
I think this film is a more, let's say, auteur vision of Batman than the last film. I think they gave what's his face, Tim Burton, more keys to the kitchen. Okay, in fairness, this is our 3rd episode we've recorded today.
Keys to the kitchen.
Keys to the kingdom.
Yeah.
And he gets away with a lot more. And it's disappointing that he didn't come back for a third
one, yeah. What did I want to say? Something about that.
Do you want to talk any more about the class stuff?
There was something you said. I wanted to say about the creepiness. Oh, the psychosexual thing. So one of the powerful scenes also, and I feel like I wanted the film to play with this a little bit more. It does, It does. But the idea of whether or not when they're not wearing masks, they are wearing masks still. So one of the best scenes is that scene. So Batman and Catwoman have a fight on the rooftops, and they both wound one another. She stabs him.
Correct.
And he like burns her.
It's 2-1.
Exactly. And he burns her. And then later when they're Selena and Bruce, they're making out on this couch, and they're not
doing
allowed.
Foley.
Yeah. And they're not. And they're not. He's like, wow, you're meowing like Catwoman. And he's like,
what sounds do Bat make?
Yeah, I was like flapping her wings.
I am the knight.
So there's wing flapping.
We're actually making out, and I'm Catwoman and George is Batman.
I like the idea of like, what does it sound like when a cat fucks a bat? I don't think those two. Yeah. Talk about animal odd couples, and they both touch one another where they're both wounded, but they hide it from each other because they don't want to obviously reveal that they're hurt. And it's like a very interesting moment because, again, it plays on this kind of psychosexual dynamic, but also, again, this idea that they're always, to some degree, wearing some kind of mask.
Yes, and I think that that's something that the film explores well. There's also something that happens in both films to speak to that, which is in the first film, the Joker says to I should say that Jack Napier, the Joker, says to Bruce Wayne, "You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight?" Which is what Jack Napier, the younger, when he is younger, says to a young Bruce Wayne after murdering his parents. In this film, Catwoman and Batman are under the mistletoe, and Batman says something about a kiss under the mistletoe can be...
Or if you eat mistletoe, it can be poisonous or dangerous.
No, it's not eating mistletoe. Oh, I hear mistletoe can be dangerous, and she says, but a kiss under mistletoe can be just as dangerous or something. And then they and then
she sexily licks his face.
Yeah, she licks his face. As Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle, they say the inverse to one another, and they realize that they're Batman and Catwoman.
Yeah.
Which is the way that the guy in the Adam West says Catwoman in the 1966. Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
And there were 3 Catwomen, right?
Yeah.
I think what's also interesting about the mask trope, which the film doesn't lean into as much as it
That's
should.
my least favorite Batman movie, the mask trope, because it felt like they gave up at that point.
Batman, the mask trope. It's really meta.
Batman, we're doing this again.
He just keeps wearing these masks and saying,
do this one again.
Is this right? Does this fit me? Is this me? It looks like me, but it doesn't feel like me.
Do I look weird?
And Alfred's like, very good, sir.
Very good, sir. Mr. Wayne, I'm wondering if it was...
Fuck.
What?
Alfred, do you think he voted remain or leave? Definitely fucking leave.
No.
Come on, Alfred.
No.
He's a fucking butler.
Yeah, but he's not into...
Holy shit. Now I want to read. I'm going to write a novel like Remains of the Day, but through the perspective of Alfred.
There is a Pennyworth show on TV now, which is about the Pennyworth family.
No, but I want to do...
My point is, he's completely turned off by Penguin's weird,
I have these fucking dreams. I'm sharing them with you. I'm sharing them with Keith. I'm sharing them with Kevin. And every time I mention my dreams, she's just like, I don't want to fucking hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I wrote all those letters to JJ and I was like, dude, you got to bring back Palpatine. It's going to be great. And look what happened. It happened. And my dreams came true. And it's amazing. And now you want to shit on those dreams
And
too?
you love that movie so much.
I fucking love that movie.
It's so good. I think, are we done with our Batman talk? Because it seems like this is going off the rails.
No, I'm just getting started.
Oh, cool. What else do you have to say?
I'm going to take another sip of this bourbon. What else do I have to say? No, I think that the idea of the masks, again, is interesting because it suggests a really kind of, I think, deep-seated and interesting thing about like sexuality in general. And that is that there always has to be this kind of element, this like enigmatic element to make something psychosexual like happen, or like sexuality even perhaps happen. So that the mask is like this kind of, again, trope, the mask trope. That's why we got the mask trope, as this really powerful metaphor for sexuality. It works well in the film, and I think they could have leaned in a little bit more.
I think that could be true. Do you remember seeing this film?
No, actually, I don't.
You don't?
I definitely saw it in the theater, but I don't remember seeing it like I remember seeing the first one.
I saw this film the day it opened.
Whoa.
It came out in May of 1992. I was 9-ish. And I remember seeing it because it was my last day of school. We had a half day. And myself and my sister Leslie and my kind of cousins, hard to explain, the Faheys went and saw it. And we all thought it was the best movie we'd ever seen in our lives. I think this might be the best Batman movie of all time.
I would obviously want to see the other ones before I pass judgment. Because
I love the Nolan films.
Dark fucking Knight.
You've seen it once. How much did you care about?
Batman Begins, I saw one. Oh, wait, sorry. Did you see? Oh, no. Dark Knight I've seen at least twice.
Okay.
I think, sorry, I misspoke.
You wanted to be right.
I misspoke.
When in fact you were wrong.
Batman Begins, I've only seen once.
Oh, okay. I've seen that. Well, I saw that in the theater a couple times.
Yeah.
I love Batman, baby.
This film is really good.
It's great.
It's great. And it is better than the first one.
And it is kind of a vision, and I think that that's great. And I also think the combination of different animation and production design and stuff just makes the film pop, 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 pop.
And those cute little penguins launching those rockets.
It's just weird that he has sex with them.
I know.
What's in the
director's cut.
Very quick thing before we finish. Favorite line in the entire film? I was their number one son, but they treated me like number two.
That's a great line.
It's a great line. It's a great movie.
I love it at the end when the penguin goes full Elephant Man, where he's like, I'm no longer a human being.
I'm an animal. Cold-blooded.
He is?
Yeah.
He's fucking cold-blooded.
One cannot underestimate how great Danny DeVito is in this film.
Correct.
And with that, I'm Liam Billingham.
I'm George Frigopoulos.
And this was
Oeuvre Busters.